Welcome, age of vintage society. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. A statement that reminds me of a rare English talent I admire so much for his freestyling back in the day. Malcolm McDowell, the A Clockwork Orange star, is not the regular movie bad guy. He's just that screen wacky fellow who initially was willing to do the roles others fear to do, something that endeared him to me and many of his fans. Times have changed. He seems to be a changed man, but memories don't fade easily, especially when it evokes a funny mood. Did Malcolm McDowell's intimate bed scene break barriers for English actors? You may have heard about this English talent, producer and television presenter, Malcolm McDowell. I don't know how well you can remember his past. He began as a fascinating movie actor and transitioned into the bigger stage. He entered the English entertainment scene during the era of sexual freedoms, but being a conscious gentleman despite perceived sexual rascality, he did not allow the system to mess him up. Rather, he took advantage of it and the pleasures thereof to become the entertainment icon he is today. This iconic gentleman already made himself part of history with those epic displays of wit and creativity as seen in his portrayal of Alex Delage in A Clockwork Orange. Fans would also not forget in a hurry his wonderful outing as Mick Travis in the trilogy of films put together by Lindsay Anderson. A quick look down memory lane indicates that McDowell is a man who never stops learning and developing his talent. McDowell was of course a pioneer in his inventive capacity, not just in the rebelliousness of British motion pictures of the late 1960s and the beginning of the 1970s, but of male dishabille on screen. It's on record that McDowell is the first English actor to do a nude scene with a woman. Although all that is now history, we can't talk about this brave personality without a flash to those evergreen memories that define his early days. Critics think McDowell represented the physical epitome of the glamour and radical age of British movies, otherwise referred to as the British New Wave. It may not have been an easy journey for young Malcolm McDowell, especially with A Clockwork Orange, which he once described as overbearing because everything was measured against it, he says. McDowell has been on the movie scene for over half a century, and his love for the industry is still keeping him active and willing to do more. He is a man that loves learning new things because of his dynamism in the entertainment arena, perhaps the reason he kept talking about learning. Was it a coincidence that he began a career with movie roles that other actors thought were difficult to accomplish? The more difficult part became his selling point, because he was willing to take on any, as long as there was a pay to take home or even the fame thereof. But make no mistake about his creativity on screen and off the camera. McDowell remains a decent young man during his heyday, though he had a lot of fun as a young bachelor in the City of London. I never did anything illegal, he said. He was just doing his stint and earning his pay. I would not know the exact way to ascertain McDowell's success as an actor, but he was sure a man who made his mark his way. He was able to transcend from what early fans knew of him on screen into a real gentleman. He is today decorated by aging with the honorary snowy hair that very few were gifted with. Malcolm McDowell is the audacious guy who began entertaining his audience after abandoning his post as the Liverpool salesman, the young man who roared at the establishment's fences just to have his way. The good news is that he is today a happy father of 5, an enthusiastic golfer, and an intermittent Hollywood actor. He has put his incredible golden age history behind him because you can't keep playing the rebel forever, he said. Malcolm John Taylor, the man you know as Malcolm McDowell, was born in 1943 in the West Riding of Yorkshire to innkeeper Edna McDowell and RAF officer Charles Taylor. McDowell relocated with his parents to Bridlington, East Riding of Yorkshire, where his father served the nearby RAF Carnaby and stayed briefly before shifting over to Liverpool, where he spent the greater part of his childhood. He learned to take care of himself as early as possible. As a teenager, McDowell began a paid job at Planter's Nut Factory close to Aintree. After schooling at Cannock Public School, he decided to put up with his father's business against pursuing a university education. He did other odd jobs while serving at his father's hostelry in Burscough, Lancashire. He was also ambitious about life, and in no time found himself working as a mobile salesman in Liverpool, before deciding to focus on his talent. He joined a touring theatre company and adopted one of his names and his mother's maiden name, McDowell, for a stage name. He was ready to hit the ground running as he anchored in London. While in school he had a little acting lesson, and by the time he moved over to London he decided it would be nice to improve himself in that line, and began training as a professional actor at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. He may have kick-started his acting journey by working briefly with the Royal Shakespeare Company, where he did a few small television roles, experiencing a few disappointments that made him shift to the Royal Court Theatre. And as the saying goes, you can never judge a book by its cover, because young McDowell happens to be an untapped talent. He was just in time to be invited for a screen test for If. Even though he never had a big screen experience before then, only did a minor show in Ken Loach's Poor Cow, which was not a criterion. McDowell was favoured with the lead role for the civic schoolboy-turned-firebrand radical Mick Travis. The incident marked the beginning of his artistic partnership with director Lindsay Anderson. That movie became a breakthrough for British countercultural cinema. No wonder the British Film Institute would adjudge If as the 12th greatest British movie of the 20th century. That was it. McDowell conditioned himself for the great challenge as fans saw him creating a gory revolution in an English public school. That movie got the hammer by critics, but it meant nothing for this talented fellow, who was simply acting to make a living for himself, while also enjoying the fun. It was rather ironic that the movie later made it to the Cannes Film Festival the year after it ended in anarchy. I learned that it may have been an offshoot of the student unrest that rocked French cities in 1968. If seems to have brilliantly portrayed the prevailing mood of the era, and you can say that again. The film won the Palme d'Or, and subsequently cemented the image of McDowell as an iconic star for several generations of student fundamentalists. It also established the young gentleman as a remarkable talent. Critics say his penetrating look that is intensely married with his azure eyes may have given him the not-too-handsome or ugly outlook that made him a picture perfect for the role. McDowell's on-screen impression at the time was that of a hard-hitting tension of a man ready to explode without any warning. Already benchmarked as one of the movie's bad guys, it took 3 years before McDowell cemented the typecast as the actor who does what others would hesitate to do in movies. He took up the lead role in A Clockwork Orange, which was Stanley Kubrick's version of Anthony Burgess's distrustful tale of extreme violence with no hope of redemption. McDowell's character, Alex, was more deadly than atrocity as a concept. Viewers watched him vandalize, kill and violate women with reckless abandon. Maybe the creator of the character was hoping to get a medal for being as anti-heroic as possible. Forgive my curiosity. And that was what Alex perfectly executed. Interestingly, the horrific dialogue scripted in the movie that is patterned the way of post-Cold War teenage jargon from both the capitalist and communist societies was well harnessed by McDowell with his plain Yorkshire accent, which made the act even more terrifying. From then on, McDowell continued to be a regular face in movies, and may have done close to 300 productions, some of which he can barely remember their names. Once in a while he is often accosted by curious young men and women who would say to him, "Oh, we loved you," referring to his act in a movie, and he would reply, "Sorry, that wasn't me." And the caller would open his or her phone and show him the DVD cover, only then that he would recognize himself and the movie, because he has forgotten ever doing such on-screen, and of course age is also a factor. A man with a peculiar on-screen swagger and a kind of poor dancing style, he portrayed himself in that legendary Orange movie as if life is a gamble with rules that can be broken. With audience reaction, McDowell may have felt the guilt of his on-screen act, but more disturbing is that though his audience knew that he was acting, they chose to believe it as though it was real, the reason they keep asking him questions at the slightest opportunity. At the climax of his fame, he was brought in for a role in Caligula, a delirious Roman epic sponsored by Penthouse magazine. The movie was more fun than its market value. McDowell showed as the crazy emperor alongside other famous actors like John Gielgud and Peter O'Toole. The film producers had to introduce adult performers to create hardcore scenes. Maybe or maybe not, the fact remains that the movie became an embarrassing disaster in the market. Even though the storyline may have been good, the nude aspect was technically off the mark. It is not clear why he left England for Hollywood, but is sure nothing more than financial interest. After several appearances in the American movie scene, notably his role as H.G. Wells in Time After Time, McDowell indeed has a lot to cheer for. While in the US, he met and fell in love with Mary Steenburgen. Their love life and eventual marriage may have ended the way it did. There was no such thought as returning to London for McDowell, because the US is a bigger stage that he wanted to explore. McDowell's first marriage was with actress Margot Bennett. That marriage lasted for about 5 years, ending sometime in 1980. It was when that one ended that he went in for Steenburgen, whom he had first met in 1978 while doing Time After Time production. That union earned him 2 children, but it unfortunately ended just like the previous marriage. McDowell still believes in matrimony, the reason he went in for a third marriage, this time to Kelly Kerr, who is 24 years younger. The union has given him 3 boys too. I guess he must be enjoying his partial retirement from active service. This might just be what he meant when he told interviewers that, "I'm an old fossil these days, so I sit still and stay quiet." The Hollywood setting was more favourable for McDowell because he made enough cash to free himself from depth. He began by playing the Brit roles, though he agreed it was boring, but the pay was rewarding. At this time he has had lots of time to reflect on his life as an actor, especially on how he left his apartment located off Church Street near Notting Hill Gate, a house he bought with his hard-earned money. When he was leaving for the US, he had asked an aunt to occupy the building, hoping that in 3 months he would be back to London, but that did not happen because he never returned, not when he got himself entangled with his second wife and 2 kids. He later sold off the building. He sees himself as a changed man, but that position may not have gone down well with thousands of fans who believe in him and knew him as the heroic villain of a man. How he abandoned the typecast that set him up for fame for a more lenient and conventional character is seen by critics as a career mistake. I don't know if you are one of those who believe that you don't change the rule in the middle of the game, as McDowell may have done. For the same reason, historian David Thompson refers to him as one with a strange, thwarted career. On whether he was as happy with his later role as he was during his younger days in acting, McDowell appears undecided, saying that it depends on the roles he was playing. "I still love it, otherwise I wouldn't do it," he was quoted, referring to his scoundrel character. He, however, maintained that he didn't appreciate it much because people didn't know what to do with me, even though he was a useful movie rebel. A Clockwork Orange did not quite fit into his idea, but he did not have a choice then. "That's what happens when you work with giants," he had said. He also described some of the producers he worked with as extremely controlling and very brutal to properly bond with. With those remarks, we can understand why McDowell decided to seek greener pastures in Hollywood, leaving his past typecast behind. Still reflecting on his past, McDowell noted that he was once speechless, saying, "My God, I've just acted in a real piece of rubbish." He also has something to say about winning awards. He is not much of a fan of how the movie community dishes out the prestigious Oscar, sometimes on movies that in all ramifications could not have been the best when compared with the poorly voted ones. Interestingly, despite playing the bad guy roles and publicly viewed as a wild young man, McDowell was not part of any known legal scandal and the like, even though he agreed that he enjoyed his bachelorhood with every opportunity he had. On how he became the first actor in British cinema to do a nude scene, McDowell recalls the act with a woman he identified as Christine Noonan in If. "I rolled around on a cafe floor off the A3. I suggested it to her, if she would do it, and the lady agreed. As such, that was not much of an issue, for the British New Wave star turned Hollywood gentleman. But now it's time to shift our attention to a mystery that's been plaguing Hollywood for years. How did Lee J. Cobb, the talented actor known for his roles in 12 Angry Men and The Exorcist, amass his tremendous wealth?